Okay, so good morning to you all. As you know, I'm in California and it's 8 o'clock in the morning here.
Sure.
And yeah, but not so terrible. And we just had a little conversation before about about the text that we're studying. Um, and it's a foreign language to all of us to a certain degree. I mean, something that we don't go along with. I certainly am not one who, for me, when we pray for, Beit HaMikdash to have a new one, I mean, I say, God forbid, under breath. I mean, it's not the sort of thing that I, would like to see, but there are people who would like to have a third Beit HaMikdash, which, I think would be awful. So let me share.
What
We're
is
up to
that, Naomi? I missed
Beit
part of last
HaMikdash.
week.
I'm sorry, Beit HaMikdash is a temple,
Oh,
right?
The
So
real temple.
the real
right,
temple. Okay, with the
right. Not
sacrifices
not
and
not
all
like
that
temple,
nonsense.
right? Not like a synagogue, right? Um, right. Which is interesting because how do you know the
Yeah.
difference between reform and conservative? The reform very often call themselves temple,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and most
Although
conservative.
my conservative synagogue was called Temple Bethel, and some of our in conservative synagogues are called Temple such and such.
Yeah. We had a Temple Bethel in Buffalo also.
Okay, well, the famous one in New York was Temple Emmanuel.
Temple
And we used
Emmanuel,
to,
right?
and
And
we
there
used
was a Temple Emmanuel too in Buffalo.
That was conservative or
No,
even
no, they were reform. They were reform.
reform.
They were
The
reform.
ours was and there was before we merged, we had Temple Bethel and Temple Beth Torah, and they were both conservative. And now we
Okay.
merged, and we're called Congregation Torah El, and
Okay. So let me just upload share the screen with you for chapter. I'll just quickly go back to what we did very, very quickly because we have different so we'll start with just for 2 seconds with each chapter. So this is chapter one. And so we saw, that there were certain types. So let me just move the people away. We had certain types of offerings, all right, burnt offerings, and then we saw the procedure of it, and that they would have to be cut up and totally burnt, and that they had a pleasing odor to God. This was all in stuff we've done already. And then you had a choice of the animals, and if you don't really have money, you could have birds. And even if you don't even have money for birds, you could bring a offering that has basically flour and So this is what we saw in the first in the first chapter, and then last week we looked at chapter 2 and 3. Let me share chapter 2 and 3. Um, here. So last week we saw about the grain offering, which had semolina in, was basically semolina, and we talked about the frankincense, the smells that you would put on it, and we didn't really talk about it, but part of it is so there would be a pleasing odor to God, but also it's the altar is probably a pretty smelly place if there's all the blood there and everything. So you
Right.
need to have things to, get away from the
Fragrant odor. Right.
right. And so we saw that, and
Not
we
to
saw
mention the slippery place.
and
yes.
probably very slippery. Yes, yes. You say that as a physician who's probably been in an operating room. So those of us who used to watch MASH, if you remember MASH,
Yes.
yes. So it's really it is a butchery type of thing, yes, for sure, for sure. Um, and so we talked about something which is very interesting is there should be no leaven in there, but we also talked about the fact that there shouldn't be any honey, and we didn't quite understand why. We had some thoughts, perhaps that it would be too burnt. We don't know, and then the smell, and then finally we talked about the whole idea of the salt of the covenant, the fact that that the covenant of, since salt is such an expensive item in the they were like salt mines. People became rich owning salt.
Mm.
And because, it adds flavor, it also preserves. And so we talked about that a little bit. But strangely enough, there's a covenant associated with salt, which is really a very interesting idea when you think about it. So these were some of the things we looked at. And then in chapter 3, we talked about the sacrifice of well-being, which is shlamim, which like shalom. And we talked about that. And we talked about the idea of it might be communion. And then the idea of putting hands on the head of the offering, which somebody mentioned is very similar to blessing the children, which is
Yeah.
also interesting if you think about it. In other words, it's a sacred act. In other words, it's not just that you're going to for a barbecue, right? But these are all sacred acts, and whatever we may think about them.
Mhm.
And and
This
also
idea
keeping
of
in mind that all
communion,
of these, what?
I was gonna say, the idea of the communion sacrifice, is that where the Christians got their concept of
Possibly,
taking
possibly,
yeah.
possibly. Look, if you go into a Catholic church, you'll see there's an altar. There's so much stuff there that's reminiscent
Mhm.
of the original temples. So
Yeah,
and the whole
I had to
idea,
go to a Catholic wedding last month and they had all that stuff.
right? Okay. Well, what you're calling stuff is coming straight out of our book. So
Right,
don't call
right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Be more respectful. I'm joking, but anyway, so you have here the fact that sacrifices have to be without blemish, and then the whole idea of laying hands on it, and it's some of it reminds us of what you do with on Yom Kippur, and the whole idea of throwing the blood around. We discussed that, and it's very sort of disgusting, but that's whatever, and that the whole idea of fat. Is not to be eaten, and that the fat is for God, right? So we joked and said maybe God doesn't have to worry about a high cholesterol level. Okay, so that's the first, that's what we did up till now. And now we're starting chapter. Good morning, Sandy. Where are you, Sandy? Which coast are you on?
I'm in the middle. I'm
Uh,
Midwest, so
so
I'm
what time is it now for
Chicago
you? Not,
area.
so what time is it for you now? 9?
10.
10. Okay, so that's not bad. Okay. So now I'm going to share this week's which is
And we
chapters
talked about
4.
suet.
Right. Right. Okay. Did anyone look up anything about suet?
What's
Okay.
it called?
So now we're coming into something very interesting at the very, very beginning, which I think we could really have a lot of discussion about that. So let's just read a little bit from um, I guess like what's on the screen. What I have on the screen, by the way, it doesn't necessarily fit into the context, but I do it to fit into the Hebrew. So let's have Sue Ferris. You want to start reading with the first page that we have here?
Okay. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelite people thus. When a person unwittingly incurs guilt in regard to any of Adonai's commandments about things not to be done, and does one of them, if it is the anointed priest who has incurred guilt, so the blame falls upon the people. He shall offer for the sin of which he is guilty a bull of the herd without blemish as a sin offering to Adonai. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before Adonai, and lay a hand upon the head of the bull. The bull shall be slaughtered before Adonai, and the anointed priest shall take some of the bull's blood and bring it into the tent of meeting.
Okay, let's just read a little bit more. Let's just read a drop
Okay.
more.
The priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle of the blood 7 times before Adonai in front of the curtain of the shrine. The priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of aromatic incense, which is in the tent of meeting before Adonai, and all the rest of the bull's blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bowl of sin offering. The fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is about the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, that is at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys, just as it is removed from the ox of the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall turn them into smoke on the altar of burnt offering, but the hide of the bull and all of its flesh, as well as its head and legs, its entrails and its dung, all the rest of the bull he shall carry to a pure place outside the camp to the ash heap and burn it up in a wood fire. It shall be burned on the ash heap.
Okay, so that in itself is interesting. Let's say, yeah, okay, that's a good place to stop. Okay, so let's go back to this. First of all, a lot of the stuff is already familiar to us, so we don't really have to, go over it, but what I want to focus on is the whole idea of unwittingly, all right, or errantly. The Hebrew word for that is be-shegaga, all right, shogeg, all right. So in other words, we have a completely new category here, all right, and this is for, as Milgram says, for an inadvertent offense. So what do you think is an example of an inadvertent offense? Think today. Think today.
Mistaken. Oh, today.
Think about driving.
I was just thinking about driving, and I'm trying to. If you don't see the stop sign, or I don't know, and
Or
go
driving
through it.
Okay.
or
Okay.
eating something you're not supposed to eat.
Okay,
Uncooked.
eating something you're not supposed to eat, something that's not kosher, but you don't realize that it's not kosher, but you've eaten it, and you can't vomit
Can't
it
bring
up,
it up again.
right? Any other ideas?
You're doing something unpleasant to someone intentionally.
Unintentionally.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's inadvertent. In other words,
Oh, okay.
that's very important. In other words, it's not done on purpose.
Right.
In other words, if I violate something, let's say on Shabbat, um, by mistake, let's say I forgot it's Shabbat, so I turn on the fire, right?
Or
Because
the
I
light.
forgot it was
Okay.
Shabbat, right? I woke up and I'm a little dizzy from waking up, and I turn on the fire for my to
Coffee.
make right because I simply forgot it was Shabbat, right?
Mhm.
That's an inadvertent offense. If I know it's Shabbat and I do that, well, that's a sin. Okay, that's not inadvertent, but it still is considered a sin because look at the word in Hebrew, ki techta bishkaga, when you sin in by mistake or inadvertently, okay? So or unintentionally or by mistake, right? So let's say you've a perfect example is of this might be on my street in Omer. For years there was a yield sign for years, and all of a sudden they changed it to a stop sign. Right now, I always treated it as a stop sign because of the danger. Right, but when they put the stop sign in, now you really have to come to a stop and not a rolling stop, right? And a lot of people at the very beginning were not used to it and would really just go through it as if it were yielding. Um, and there were 1 or 2 accidents in at that crossroads. So you'd say that the one who if you're used to doing something, okay, so that's an example. Now, but here it's the first example that we have here. It's if the anointed priest does that by mistake. Now that's more serious. Why is it more serious if it's the anointed priest who does that?
Is it because he's held to a higher standard?
Okay, yeah. What else? Well, to a certain degree, he's the leader of the people, right?
Mhm.
He's supposed to be more careful. And if he makes a mistake, it could have repercussions, all right? What kind of repercussions could it be? And what kind of mistakes could a priest make? It says here, to any of God's commandments. So it's not only things in the temple.
He could cheat someone, maybe, not.
Well, also, as we saw last week, he with the woman just stripping her clothes or her breasts were shown, and he might think of something else.
You're talking about the sota. That was in the other class, right? Not
The other
everyone is
class.
Oh,
right, right.
oh
But no,
well,
but the
yeah.
example of the sota, no, absolutely, absolutely, right?
Okay,
In other
all right.
words, what if he? No, no, but that's a great example. What if he touched her breast by mistake, okay, or something like that, not deliberately, right, but by mistake, okay. Um, so, first of all, leaders are and probably should be held to a higher standard, right? I think they should be. If you want to be a leader, then you have to know what that means. People are going to gossip about you. They're going to, point to, they're going to say, if he does that, why can't I do that? Right? That sort of thing. And by the way, we have a whole nation, a whole two nations, and I don't want to go into politics, so I won't, but whose attitude is, if our leaders are doing such and such, then why shouldn't we? Right? And people follow the example of leaders and religious leaders as well. Okay, so this is really very important. So if he does something, and because we're talking about holy things, the punishment could be very great. And when we get to chapter 9, we'll see what happens when someone makes a mistake. It could be very, very serious. Okay, so, and then we have the whole procedure, all right, which we're familiar with. We don't really have to go into it, but let's just see what the commentary is here. The commentary here says the inadvertent offense does not at all imply an ethical transgression. Okay, so that's interesting, but rather the unwitting violation of a prohibition, any of the Lord's commands that should not be done. All right. And then if you do that, it has the consequence of having some sort of pollution. In other words, you're polluting the atmosphere and by making this mistake, even if it was not on purpose. And so you have to, do something about it. You have to clean it up. And the rabbis explained that the errancy could result from either ignorance of the law or
Mhm.
ignorance of the circumstances of the act committed. Now, there's a very famous saying in today. We say ignorance of the law is
No excuse.
no excuse. Okay, so here we could say the same thing. It's no excuse, and you have to do something about it, right? So here, if you make a mistake with the law, you have to pay a fine, right? Oh, I didn't know, but you still have to get fined, or you may end up in jail, right? So that's one thing, right? The idea of the anointed priest, the word the anointed priest, is a designation for the high priest. So now we're really talking about not just any, right? The word for the anointed priest is interesting. HaKohen HaMashiach, right? And we know the word Mashiach, right? The Messiah. But here it's not a Mashiach the way we would understand it, but it's an interesting concept, right? So the anointed priest is actually the not only anointed priest, but the appointed priest, the high priest. Okay. And so what we have here again is some sort of a sin offering, chatat, right? But Milgram, who I've mentioned many times, who is the scholar about the book of Leviticus, um, he claims that this should be a purification offering, all right? And not so much a sin offering or Okay, so in other words, you have to cancel or remove the the offense, okay? And so, but okay, that's a little bit technical. We don't have to, but the whole idea is that sin, if you want to think of it, is more like the word an offense, right? And an offense to whom?
God.
God. Okay. So if
Mhm.
you're in his temple and you're offending God, you have to do something about it. Okay.
What is that sentence, the half sentence, that it falls upon the people?
People. Yeah, I wondered about that too.
Where was that earlier?
I
Where
guess, yes, it's the first,
the priest does something inadvertent, but it falls upon the people.
Yeah, that's right at the
Ah,
beginning.
right.
I
Oh, yeah.
think
Thank you. I completely forgot. I completely forgot that. And I really wanted to discuss it. Thank you. Okay. Why does the blame fall upon the people? Thank you
No
for
idea.
I can't.
why?
I would think it could be the opposite. The people do it.
No, because the leader, oh, I really don't want to go into politics, but to a certain degree,
they feel
if
the
you think,
leader's infallible.
no, it's
Elect him.
Wouldn't
if the
make it.
leader is guilty of something, all right, or
Mhm.
behave, and it has nothing to do with morality here. But let's say we're talking about if our leaders do immoral things and they sin and they do bad things, all right, and so then the guilt falls upon the people. What does that mean? There's going to be anti-Semitism if it's Israel, right? We're all going to be blamed, right, for our leaders' things. And the same thing, there'll be anti-Americans all over Europe. People, I don't know if you've seen this anyplace, but people who go as tourists to Europe sometimes hide the fact that they're Americans. They say they're Canadians. Have any of you read that? Because there's such anti-Americanisms in the so the blame, in other words,
Yeah,
if your leader is does something bad, you're in a sense responsible. Now, it doesn't sound fair, does it?
lots of things aren't fair.
But the leader is like the representative of the people.
Yeah, but it's
So
not like he was elected.
Right?
okay. No, no, but no, but you understand that the problem is that the high priest is like to a certain degree, is the conduit to God. I mean, he's the one who sacrifices things and everything. He's the one who sees that things go up to God. So in a sense, he's an intermediary, which sounds strange to us today because in Judaism today, there are no intermediaries. Rabbis are not intermediaries, they're teachers, right? Sometimes people mistakenly think of rabbis as if they're like God-like, but they're not. They're not. I mean, I have a whole bunch of rabbis in my family, and believe you me, they're not godlike. So they're not, and they're not, representatives or anything. But people, people like to think about. But in the now, here's an example of Catholicism. The priest is definitely right, like in ancient times, is like the representative of. I don't know. Does that answer your question, Norman? You're muted.
I'm wondering if the priest does something and it says so that the blame falls upon the people, that maybe he does something, but that something somehow is misinterpreted as the people doing something bad. And then he has to specifically say, no, it's me, and I'm going to do a sin offering or a retribution offering or whatever what they want to call it.
Okay,
I
that's
don't
All
know.
right.
It's a strange sentence.
I have a sort of an explanation. So that the blame falls upon the people. The entire community was affected by the possible offenses of the individual in charge of the sanctuary and the priesthood. Here, the law refers to the offenses that occurred while the priest was performing priestly duties, not the priest for which he had to atone independently. Such inadvertent offenses, even where was no intent to violate the commandments, might immediately arouse God and result in divine punishment. Where does it continue? Preventing, I can't find the rest.
So maybe that God will blame the people for the
Yeah,
sin.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Right. In other words, if your leader does something bad, look, uh, think about the golden calf. Aaron was responsible for that, right? He got
right.
it scot-free, right?
Something.
And there was a civil war and lots of people were killed.
Mhm.
So, in other
Yep,
words, uh, think about war in general, right?
yep.
What's war? War is between leaders, but instead of in ancient times where
Well,
you'd have a
this war
no, but
is,
I'm saying instead of having, a war, any war, it's two countries against each other. In ancient times, you'd have, what do you call it? In the medieval times with the lances, they would go on their horses and with those long lances, and you kill the leader and that's it. But then later on, war became involved people and and everyone. So, or even like David and Goliath, right? If David and Goliath is maybe an example of that, where you have two representatives. Um, but then what happens is after that happens, and the people are the ones who end up, being okay. So thank you for making me go back. I really did want to discuss that. That was not something I wanted to avoid. Then the other thing is the whole idea of the horns of the altar, all right, which is verse 7, the horns of it, al karnot hamizbeach, right? So the priest puts the blood on the karnot hamizbeach, the horns of the altar, right? Um, and which is really very interesting. Why on the halls? Why on the horns of the altar? All right, and you can see here that there's no real explanation of that. All right. However, later on, the horns of the altar became a place where a person who was running away could seek asylum, right? By holding on to the horns of the altar. And you actually have an example of that, in later on in one of the historical books, where actually someone is holding on to the horns of the altar, and they're actually pulled away, which shouldn't happen. And even today, there's sanctuary in churches, right? You
Yes,
have in the States today, I think, does
mhm.
ICE actually go into
yes.
churches?
They go
They've
into,
been trying.
What?
I think they've been trying to go into churches.
Okay, but the whole idea, because in the church you have
yeah,
like a sanctuary, you have an altar. I don't know if the
right.
altars have horns on them. I don't know. That I don't remember. But okay. So and so now we have a different category. Okay, so that was the priest, and now you have a different category. So Norman, would you like to read it if it's the community leadership?
Sure. If it is the community leadership of Israel that has erred,
Wait. That's interesting because here, like, huh, if all the community of Israel should err,
Yeah, the whole,
it's two different. Wait, did I make a mistake here?
no,
No, I didn't. So why is completely different?
it's
Huh,
here
not,
it's kol edah,
right.
the whole
Kol
community.
Adat Yisrael. So why is the community literature leadership? Huh, interesting. Maybe Ada is translated by them as leadership, whereas altar is translating it as the community. Okay, anyway, you could read You could read the JPS. This is JPS on the left and okay, so read that one.
Well,
Okay.
it may be that you have kol edah in the beginning of the sentence, and then you have me'enai hakahal, which is also the whole edah. So maybe they're saying it can't possibly be the same that we're referring to.
Right.
Okay, if it is
No, no, I think you might be right. I think JPS is probably trying to make sense out of this.
okay.
So
If
let's read JPS, yeah.
If it is the community leadership of Israel that has erred, and the matter escapes the notice of the congregation, so they do any of the things which by Adonai's commandments ought not to be done, and they realize guilt, when the sin through which they incurred guilt becomes known, the congregation shall offer a bull of the herd as a sin offering, and bring it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the community shall lay their hands upon the head of the bull before Adonai, and the bull shall be slaughtered before Adonai. The anointed priest shall bring some of the blood of the bull into the tent of meeting, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle of it 7 times before Adonai in front of the curtain. Some of the blood he shall put on the horns of the altar, which is before Adonai in the tent of meeting, and all the rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting.
Let's see if I want to go on further. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. He shall remove all its fat from it and turn it into smoke on the altar. He shall do with this bull just as is done with the priest bull of sin offering. He shall do the same with it. The priest shall thus make expiation for them, and they shall be forgiven. He shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. It is the sin offering of the congregation. In case it is a chieftain who incurs guilt by doing unwittingly any of the things which by the commandment of his God Adonai ought not to be done, and he realizes guilt, or the sin of which he is guilty is made known, he shall bring as his offering a male goat without blemish. He shall lay a hand on the goat's head, and it shall be slaughtered before Adonai. It is a sin offering. The priest shall take with his finger some of the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and the rest of its blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering.
Okay, so this is not so different, right? Oh, wait, there's even more. Wait a minute. Let's see. Okay, so we probably should stop. Wait, if here, this is where this should, let me just, this is, read till, continue reading just till the yellow.
Okay. All its fat he shall turn into smoke on the altar, like the fat of the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall thus make expiation on his behalf for his sin, and he shall be forgiven.
Okay, so what do we have here? What's the case here? There's a lot of similarities, of course, but the major difference is, right, let me just get so I could see it for myself. Okay, what's the major difference here? As a, the first one was the high priest, right?
Now it's just the people, the congregate, the community.
The community, okay. Either the community or the community leadership. It's
Leadership.
really not clear. I would go with altar on this one, to tell you the truth.
Well,
So if that's clear, if it's the community and the thing is hidden from the eyes of the people, right? And they do one of the commands that should not be done, and they bear guilt. Let's think of some examples there. That's what we're missing. We're really missing examples.
And these all have to be inadvertent.
Right, right.
yeah. Um, I don't know.
Maybe,
Uh,
maybe
how about,
inadvertently spreading false rumors.
Yeah,
But
it
they're
could be.
convinced that they're true, but it turns out afterwards that they were wrong.
okay, that's a very nice example. I was thinking more about it, something, a ritual, for instance, let's say, um, somehow or another, uh, let's say today, you're supposed to either see three stars for Shabbat to be over, or a certain time, right? If it's
Mm,
cloudy and you can't see three times stars, you have to go according to the time, right? It's listed
right.
on the calendar. Um, and what if inadvertently, make Havdalah too soon, and you're violating the Shabbat, and you don't do it on purpose, but you think that, um, um,
You thought a plane was one of the stars.
right. Or you confuse a star for a light for a star or something like that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Or someone comes into the room and says, "Oh, I just saw three stars," Uh,
Mhm.
so I was just introduced to this lovely. Um, I don't watch television at home, but to this lovely series, where the rabbi is dating a non-Jewish woman, um,
My
and
friend just told me about that last
yeah,
night too.
it's
I don't have
charming.
Netflix.
It's charming. I just started watching it, and and season two is beginning. I really recommend it. I think it's really very, very cute. It's more than cute. I think there's a lot of stuff. So they were actually counting stars. The rabbi was explaining to the woman where the stars, and she said, "I think I see a star." He said, "No, no, 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 it's not a star." So, but the whole idea. So, if there's something inadvertent, or let's say, you buy for Passover, you buy some food that, and you looked at all the ingredients and everything looks fine and everything, but you miss one ingredient which makes it not kosher for Pesach, and the whole community is eating it by mistake, because you brought it to the synagogue, or something like that. All right, and so. And no one knows it, right? But when they do find out about it, then they have to repent, right? And the way they repent, that's we're already, it's pretty similar with all of that. That's pretty similar. Anything that you noticed that was a little bit different? I didn't really notice anything that
Hmm.
different.
Well, when they get to the goat, that's different.
Okay, there wasn't a
That's
goat
later because
before.
they're
Okay.
In both
Uh,
of these cases,
that's when it's a
uh,
chieftain. Did we read that when a chieftain?
yeah. Oh, the
Yeah, so
chieftain.
it's
That's
when
the chieftain. Okay.
right, when the chieftain. So that's different. So you have the community, right? So it's the sin offering of the congregation. In case here, that we should actually mark that. So when a chieftain, that's a new topic, all right?
Right, right.
I wasn't
Okay.
really looking at the Hebrew. When a chieftain offends, all right, and you could see, right? There's a little pay here, which shows that
Mm,
you have. So
new.
it's a new topic. I wasn't really looking at the Hebrew. Okay, so when a chieftain offends, all right, um, and again, he inadverted me, right? And when he found out, that's when he has to bring the unblemished male goats. Okay. All right, so we have that. Um, Okie doke. Anything else
it's
that we
interesting in both of those cases, the priest and the community, they go and get a bull from the herd. So it must mean that's a communal herd, because it's certainly not a herd that belongs to the priest, and it's not a
Mm,
herd that also at the same time belongs to the community, which means that there's a community herd. It's like a kibbutz or something, because that's not where people bring their individual sacrifices. They bring them from their individual herds,
mm.
correct?
That's fascinating. No, I don't know. That is fascinating. The question is, where are all of these animals coming from? All right. do the priests have a corral? You know, that's really interesting. Tzvika? Oh, come here for a minute. I'll ask my son, the rabbi, what his thoughts are. Somebody just asked a question. When you bring a sacrifice, right?
Yeah,
Where are the priests getting all of these animals from?
what, in the desert?
Forget about the fact that there's a desert. Let's say do they have a special, let's say it's the priest himself who sins. Where is he getting the animals from? Do they have like their own collection of animals?
Yeah, you would buy them, they had herds,
No, but did they own animals that they could use for sacrifice?
the priests,
Yeah.
why not?
Oh, they had their own money. But it's not like no, it's really a very interesting question. I'm sure it's discussed in the Talmud, but here it doesn't really tell you where it's coming from. Yeah. So that's a very good question. And of course, then it would be picked up in the Talmud.
It's a cross question, but how do they have all these animals? I forgot
There's no,
answer.
okay, we can't answer it now, but that's an excellent question. And so let's assume, as he said, they have money of their own and they could, buy it from the local butcher store, or, not the butcher store, the local whatever. Okay, great question. All right, now we come to the next category. All right, how are we doing with time?
I had another question about the 7 times, sprinkling the blood 7 times. Seven
Right.
seems to come up all the time in the Torah.
All the time, all the time.
All the time.
It's
Okay.
a holy number. There are a whole bunch of numbers like that.
'Cause
There's
we're studying prophets with my rabbi on Wednesdays, and we're doing Joshua, and just the other day, something 7 was done 7 times.
right. You went around Jericho 7 times. I
7
mean,
times, right? Yeah.
it's
And
like,
I asked the question, is that where the walking around the bride 7 times comes from? Although
Yeah,
the
yeah,
situations are quite different, but
right.
it could, right?
The world was created in 7 days. So you have the 7 shows up over and over and over again. There are a lot of numbers like that. 10 is also a number like that.
Read this book and have all the.
Okay, so he just showed me this book. Oh, it's what?
In English.
It's very heavy. In Hebrew, it's called Torah HaKorbanot by Jonathan Grossman. He thinks it might be in English. Anyway, from Bar Ilan. Oh, I know you. Yeah, I know him. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's maybe I'll take a look at it before next week if I have time.
Or ask ChatGPT.
Or ask ChatGPT, right? Okay, they can make up something also.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So okay, Doug. You know what? I think we're a little bit. Tzvika, what time do we have to leave? Okay, so listen, I think I'll continue from here next time. All right, and we'll stop early. If that's okay with you.
That's fine, Naomi. You do what you got to do. Enjoy your time and with your
Yeah,
son.
Absolutely.
yeah, we have to go into.
Have a
we
good
have to,
trip. Mazel tov to your son.
yeah. Okay, so if you want, you could also go into congregation Ner Tamid.
Congregation what?
Ner Tamid.
And Nair.
And Friday night when he's being installed. I think it's
okay.
at 6 p.m. I think something
6
like
p.m.
that.
California time.
Yeah. It's California
So it'll
time.
be 9 p.m. here.
Whatever.
Yeah.
No, it's the opposite. Oh no, yeah, you're earlier, right? Or later.
We're earlier.
Right. Okay. I can only keep one sense of numbers straight at once.
It's what time is it there?
Right now it's
9?
It's 8:47. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's 11:47 here. So
Yeah. Okay, so
Well,
have a
thank
good
you,
week.
Okay.
Okay, and
Thank
we'll
you.
meet next week. And
Have a
we'll
good
start
week,
from this point.
everybody.
it'll
Mazel
be
tov.
3:00. Okay,
Thank
you're
you.
right.
You,
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Susan, did you get my email?
From you? No, I
Yeah,
don't.
go check
Well,
your
let me look.
email.
Okay, I'll let you know.
All right,
I'll
bye-bye.
reply.